Welcome back to AgriTalk from Des Moines, Iowa, the offices of the National Pork Board. The National Pork Checkoff last November celebrated its 25th anniversary. Hard to believe. I remember all those discussions and debates leading into that, the formation of the checkoff. And looking back now, 25 years later, a lot of successes from that checkoff and from the decisions that pork producers made back then to establish that checkoff. Speaking of anniversaries, we want to thank our very good friend Cindy Cunningham for setting all this up for us today. Always making us welcome here to Polk County, Iowa. And she just celebrated her 20th anniversary with the pork industry. And we remember with the pork producers and now Pork Producers Council, now with the National Pork Board, always doing a great job helping the nation's pork producers tell their story. And we in the media certainly enjoy and appreciate working with Cindy and congratulating her on her first 20 years as we get ready for the next 20. Right, Cindy? All right. I mentioned the Iowa pork producers just wrapped up their annual meeting, the Iowa Pork Congress, and joining us now is the executive director for the Iowa Pork Producers Association, Rich Degner. Rich, thank you for joining us. How'd the meeting go?
Well, it's my pleasure being with you today, and the meeting was great. I've been a longtime employee of the Iowa Pork Producers Association, and I really think it was one of our best congresses that we've had over the years. The producers came in starting on Monday with our producer leaders, our board of directors. We started meeting on Monday and then moved into our annual delegate session on Tuesday. And then we moved on into the trade show seminars and other activities, and attitudes are great.
You know, I was just talking about 25 years of the checkoff, and it got me thinking about these past 25 years. It's hard to imagine an industry that has changed more maybe than the pork industry when I think back of how it's all kind of played out these last few years. And, still a lot of hogs being raised, but by fewer people. We don't see as many pork producers or some of the families involved that used to be. How has that been a challenge for you as a state association to go through that kind of a transition?
Well, it's a really interesting point, and I get involved in these philosophical conversations quite often with my counterparts and other commodity organizations. Really what's happened is, we've restructured in the pork industry. We don't have all of the little different segments, and I tell the people in the beef industry that I really prefer, having been where we were and where we are now, I really prefer the more homogeneous group. People are really seeing things in a more like-minded fashion, if you will. But what's interesting is we still have a lot of people involved in the pork industry. We may not have as many operations, but we still have lots of people involved in those operations here in Iowa. And as an example, when I take a look at the most recent PQA Plus certification data, we have more than 14,000. I think we're starting to push 15,000 producers who are certified PQA Plus. So it's still pretty impressive numbers.
That's a good point. A lot of people in the pork industry are still involved, but in different ways. They found a way to stay involved through this transition.
Well, and an example I will use is, we may have an operation, but that operation is owned by a father, 2 sons, and now a grandson. So you have 4 people at one operation who, in fact, have ownership position, and they may have employees, and oftentimes do.
We've heard some exciting news for the pork industry about demand, about consumption, about different promotions, and a lot of things happening. I guess that reflects the attitude that you talked about at your meeting, that you saw a positive attitude. What do you see as your biggest issues, your biggest challenges, your priority items on your agenda this coming year?
Well, the priority item from my perspective is we still like to give the message to our fellow Iowans that livestock production, and specifically pork production, is a great fit for Iowa agriculture. We've got a system in utilizing our livestock production where we can utilize the corn and the soybeans that are produced here in Iowa, and then the nutrients, or manure if you will, return back to the soil, and it becomes increasingly powerful as the cost of energy increases. The last data I saw, we were here in Iowa. Some people say, well, we may have too much livestock in Iowa, and the answer to that is no, we don't have enough livestock in Iowa. The last data I saw was indicating that we are importing still about 74% of our nitrogen needs as commercial fertilizer. And so we can use a whole lot more livestock. And when you take a look at the P&K, it's about 2/3 of it that we're still buying and bringing into the state.
I'll say sometime in speeches, maybe it's an image or a perception issue. Instead of saying there's a livestock operation out there, we ought to just say to people, there is a food and energy plant out there. I mean, when you look at it in those terms, you're producing food, you're producing energy. Those are things we need, and that's the message we need to get across.
And I really think it's important. You know, we all think green, we all think sustainable, and we really need a sustainable system. I will challenge people to ask them, how sustainable is it to continue to produce corn and soybeans and have to import that much fertilizer?
We're talking with Rich Degner, Executive Director of the Iowa Pork Producers Association. What about environmental challenges, whether it's EPA regulations or urban sprawl and social demands and concerns? How does the pork industry deal with all those?
Well, I think from a environmental perspective, I would challenge people to take a look at our producers. Our producers here in Iowa, they all have to, they have manure management plans, so they cannot exceed crop uptake of those nutrients. They have to present that manure management plan annually. It has to be approved by the Department of Natural Resources. And so I think that's done in a very conscientious manner. And of course, there's restrictions on, you can't have your livestock production located close to public use areas and cities and so on.
What about challenges from groups like HSUS?
They're part of the real world. And, we just have to be accustomed to dealing with them on a daily basis. And I think we have. I think one of our seminars, we had Dr. Wes Jameson in at our Pork Congress here this week talking in a couple of different settings to producers and helping them better understand the issues that they're facing and providing some suggestions. I think we need, a frustration I have is we need to take a look at how can we better be proactive in that issue.
And, this is known as a pork state, obviously, but you have the challenge, too. Your industry has a challenge of telling its story to the rest of Iowa.
Yeah, we do, and I think we get about doing it on a very regular basis. We have some TV commercials, radio commercials. We're blessed that we have the adequate financial wherewithal that we can invest in those kinds of things. And so, we're trying to put a face on Iowa agriculture, and we're blessed in that we have a great organization that was put together by multi-commodity groups and the Iowa Farm Bureau. So we have, corn, soybean, beef, pork, poultry, turkey, dairy folks. We've all come together and formed a coalition to support Iowa's farmers. And it really is focused on helping producers when they're going to put up new livestock facilities to get them sited correctly, make sure that we have trees planted around them, and just really helping have good neighbor relations and do things right. And that coalition has been invaluable.
Great. Good to talk with you, Rich. Thanks a lot.
And thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Rich Degner, Executive Director of the Iowa Pork Producers Association. And with that, let me give you the results of our poll question. Do you agree with President Obama's decision to reject the Keystone XL pipeline project for now? 79.6% of you responding said no, you do not agree with that decision. 20.4% of you saying yes, you do. Thanks for participating, and we'll have another poll question for you coming up on Monday. On Monday, we're going to look at a United Soybean Board study showing the economic vulnerability caused by a crumbling lock and dam system, and we'll get more reaction to the new school lunch rules. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend. This is AgriTalk.